Hello, everyone. Really excited about this panel. We have 3 companies people would consider, I would say, unicorns in the space. We've got some questions already outlined, but I do want to let you know that we are accepting questions in the app. So if you have anything you'd like to ask the panelists, I'll do my best to make sure that it gets included. Okay? Gentlemen. So to get started, as we're talking about how to acquire, keep, and grow with customers and sales teams, let's talk about what some of the more obvious problems are when building a sales pipeline. Things that you've seen, whether it's cold calling or hard to build trust with the customer. What are some of the issues that you've seen?
You're supposed to answer first.
In building the sales pipeline. Problems that you've seen in the sales pipeline. So whether it's phone calls to the salespeople, cold calling, maybe emails aren't being opened.
Well, I'll tee up Martin a little bit. I think certainly the outbound process is terribly difficult. How do you identify your ideal customer profile and then get them to be aware of what you're offering and get them engaged with your service is incredibly difficult, and generally speaking, historically, has been highly manual, very inefficient process for salespeople to identify those folks, reach out, scanning different networks, trying to find the right contact. And I think folks like Pipedrive and Martin have done a great job helping there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, historically, it used to be that most CRMs didn't even get used once because people didn't even get to the point where they could identify what their process is. So building the pipeline, not even taking action or getting organized or any of that stuff, but just identifying what it is that our sales process looks like. So that's oftentimes a really big deal. And as you said, some of us are trying to make that part much better.
Yeah, and it's obviously complicated. Even once you build the pipeline, how do you move it to fruition, right? So one of the biggest challenges we see is you can get people interested in what you're doing with a good description, but moving from that into an executed and revenue-generated contract, what we have found is start small. We'll start with a pilot, and for example, our pitch at Zeta is, if you do a $50,000 test on our software platform, and we can't cut your effective cost to create a customer by at least 25%, we give you 100% of your money back. And for better or worse, that's our shtick for trying to wedge in.
Yeah, I would also encourage those in the audience that don't have a self-service business model or an aspect of their business that allows customers to come and find their website property, learn about the solution they have, and get up and running. For SendGrid, it has been incredibly powerful to have both. We certainly have sales teams that go out and find customers, but we also have, in fact, 99% of the customers that start with SendGrid have never spoken to a SendGrid salesperson. So building a solution to a specific problem that's beautiful and easy to use, easy to adopt, to drive value, is a notable and I think a differentiated way of going to market that is now possible in a way that was just simply not possible even 5-10 years ago.
And speaking of possible, go ahead.
I mean, that's certainly really nice, and more companies are doing that these days. So are we, by the way, but a lot of the more complicated products and services still need to be sold by salespeople.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're an enterprise-grade solution to Fortune 2000 companies. This requires a lot of food, a lot of wine.
A lot of golf being played.
Yeah, well, my golf game is much worse than it used to be. But no, I mean, you can create an elegant interface in an ecosystem that allows you to auto-generate. But even I would guess, as your clients scale, you're giving personal attention as they scale, or they're not going to hit maximum potential.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, the human touch still matters a ton. I would argue it's an and, not an or. Do both versus one or the other. Yeah, if you can.
Totally.
If appropriate to your business, as you said, as Martin said, certain software categories, certain solutions, it just makes no sense to try to make it self-service. It's simply too complicated. But if you can, it's a very powerful go-to-market.
And what about once you have the customer and you have to communicate with them? I know you are recently dealing with a buyout with Twilio, I believe.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you see as the future of customer communication once you've acquired them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of the reason that Twilio and SendGrid are getting together, we announced the deal just a couple of weeks ago, is we have this very aligned and shared vision of a world in which every digital user on the planet should be reached and communicated with over a variety of channels. And frankly, the mix of which channels will vary literally user by user. And so we've had email as front and center as the channel that we have focused on most over our 8 or 9 years. Twilio's focused on a lot of messaging channels, so SMS. They've done WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and a few others. And so, across the two companies, we believe we will allow any business, any application, to be able to communicate with a user over whatever form of communication they prefer. Some may be email, some may be push notifications, maybe an SMS text, an in-app message, something on WhatsApp, or some concoction of all of them. And that's, I think that is just the world in which all of us will live in. It's really going to be an and, same thing, and not an or. There's been a proliferation of communication channels as opposed to, and that has been additive. So we haven't seen the rise of Messenger or WhatsApp reduce email volumes.
Right.
Email volumes continue to grow on a global basis. It's just an and, not an or.
Yeah. I know backstage you were saying people say, oh, email's outdated, which we know it's not. And collectively, your two companies are sending over 1 trillion emails a week.
We send 1 trillion messages a year
I was like, well,
through our platform. Not quite a week, but it's
step it
a
up,
lot.
huh?
and he's sending 500 billion, so
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Yeah. But even outside of emails, when the customer is reaching out to you, I read an article, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal that came out recently, talking about the hold times with customers reaching you and how you can automate that. Can you give us a little insight into the
Yeah, so the Journal ran a thing this week talking about how call routing is done. At Zeta, we're really focused on data. So, for example, our platform, about 2.4 billion people a month hit our platform that we're tracking their behaviors, we're tracking what they're doing. We use our natural language processing artificial intelligence platform to synthesize that down into intent. It's intent to purchase something, or intent, in this case, to churn off a platform. So one of the things that we're doing is we're building a score for a customer. So the Journal eloquently pointed out that two people who live next door to each other might call into a call center for a large wireless provider. One person might get routed right to a rep. Another person might hold for 20 or 30 minutes. I got a lot of very negative comments about certain friends having to hold for long periods of time and why that was my fault. But at the end of the day, the data and the ability to ingest it, synthesize it down to a score or a value, we see as the future of marketing. And the ability to do that in milliseconds and make decisions on how messaging is created. To his point, messaging is ubiquitous, right? It's plugging into any open API that you can operate with, and we see everything as omni-channel, even analog. Whether it's a set-top box or it's an outbound telephone call for a call center, it all has to come out of the same data set and synthesize down through the artificial intelligence.
Right.
I'm sure you see a lot of that as well.
For sure. But at the same time, as many of these things are automated and kind of AI comes in, figures out the score, in the end, we still believe that it's really important to have that human touch. So once you have that score and once something identifies that kind of someone should reach out and talk to that person, then kind of making sure that the people that are making these phone calls or sending these emails they do have the time to actually be thoughtful and ask the right questions and have that human touch. I think that this is where the technology these days kind of really nicely comes together, where we automate away all of the tedious, repetitive things that kind of no one actually wants to do anyway, that takes up so much of people's time, so that they have more time to have these kind of in-depth conversations and actually do the things that humans are really good for.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that theme is one that is common across the practitioners in sales and marketing of every industry. They're looking for how can AI and technology empower me to do my job in a dramatically more effective way than I ever could before. And in the worlds in which we live, where the data explosion is so massive, the number of data points that you could use to optimize which customer you should be reaching out to with what message at what time, whether that's over a sales channel or a marketing channel, is, as a human being, a single person, would take, it's either an insurmountable task or it's very
impossible.
Impossible to do it as well as the machines can. But a lot of sales and marketing professionals do their best, which is not nearly as good as it could be with the enablement or the power of AI technologies to these domains. So tons of opportunity.
And I agree with both, but to give a great example, two very obvious marketing signals is if somebody buys a hamburger, it's highly probable they want fries with that. And if somebody buys a Gillette razor, it's highly probable they'll want blades with that, right? Humans were able to get to that point and figure that out, right? If you think about the trillions of signals we send collectively every moment of every day, how do you triangulate and synthesize signals that are, might seem nonsensical to a human, but ultimately lead to a decisioning? But to Martin's point, the more valuable the consumer, the more we feel a human needs to engage. So, as the journal pointed out, we do believe the vast majority of customers should be handled on an automated basis, but the more valuable the customer for this wireless company we're talking about, it's about what's their revenue per month and how long have they been with the company. If the ARPU is 39 pounds a month, you might send them a couple of messages and see them on their way. If the ARPU is $500 a month, you're really going to want to engage with that human.
Right. And really, the artificial intelligence, though, and the information you're reading is only as good as the information you're giving it. So for you, I know data, and I think Syncred is like the first-party data. How important is it to own your own information?
So we believe that owning first-party data is the key to the future of marketing, and we've made multiple acquisitions to do that. The biggest of which is a company called Disqus, D-I-S-Q-U-S, which is the world's largest commenting platform. We've made a series of acquisitions to build our data cloud. And even though we now control the world's third largest data set behind only Facebook and Google, which is still a little weird for me to say, nobody's ever heard of us, and we sort of were trying to keep it that way, so please don't mention us in the audience. But we never sell our data. The first thing we did when we bought every data company we bought is effectively turned off every third party they sold data to, which also didn't make us popular on that side of the aisle. But we use the data as electricity to fuel our platform, which is, I think, a lot of what you guys are trying to do as well, right?
Yeah, there's an enormous opportunity when you operate at that scale. We reach 3 billion unique email recipients every month, every quarter. And so when you see, which is about half of the world's online population, you got about 6 billion of the 8 billion people are online now. So we're touching about half of the world's online population. You can just see a lot of who's engaging with what. And now in a GDPR compliant world, this gets to David's point, first-party data matters a ton. And so where we're focusing mostly is within clients, within a customer. Even within a customer, their own ability to ascertain all of the data points that they're seeing and create insights out of that is difficult. I think what these guys are doing is really innovative.
Yeah, for sure. Pipedrive is all about making salespeople more efficient. So kind of having that first-party data is super important. And one of the things that makes us so much different from kind of many other legacy players is that people actually use Pipedrive instead of kind of typing stuff in once a week so that someone can run a report. So we have this incredibly rich set of data of salespeople actually doing their job every day, every couple of minutes. So based on that data, we can make so many better decisions about how to make their lives better, how to make them more efficient. So like all of the AI in the world you can put together, if the input into that AI system is of poor quality, then the output is also of poor quality. I don't want to use the other word I usually use in the sentence.
And we actually have a question from the audience. Adapting the price for the target or finding the target for your price. How?
What's adapting the price? Or it moved.
So are you adapting, how are you using data to determine prices or the quality of what you're selling?
So for us, it's a software platform. You know, there's always, and unless you're Sameer and you're able to build this incredibly elegant solution that kind of works across everything, there's more of an art than a science to pricing.
Yeah.
You know, when we work with, you know, the world's largest automotive company or the world's largest bank or the world's largest airline, all three of which are clients, whose names I'm not supposed to mention, you know, the pricing is different.
Yeah.
And we do it on volume. So if you're using our software platform and our AI, you get the data for free, it's bundled in, and the more you use it, the less it costs as a percentage of the utilization. And that's how we built our pricing schema to reward very large clients. You know, in an environment where the three of us are software companies, our gross margins are going to be pretty high.
Yeah.
So the more throughput you can get through the platform, the happier, you know, we are, right, Martin?
That's right. Yeah, for sure. One thing about pricing is you will never be happy with your pricing anyway. So as you said, more of an art than a science, and also kind of, it will never be right. You will always feel that in some places you're leaving money on the table, and in some places people are complaining that it's too...
Well, and the client will always feel overbilled.
Many of them will be, yeah. Well, that's the art, when you find that kind of sweet spot where kind of they're not too unhappy about it, and you're still kind of not too unhappy either.
Yeah, we found this incredible, back to the in that self-service model, where we have our public pricing for the lower entry packages for people just to come in and get started. And those prices are on our website. It's super transparent. People pick which package makes the most sense for them, and they go, and we actually use a lot of science on what those numbers should be and how we optimize those over time. And then to David's point, as you scale, you get to a point where it says, if you're above this threshold, yeah, you probably need to talk to a salesperson, and we'll help you with something that's custom and bespoke that does, in fact, honor and reward you for the volume or the scale that you're going to do in our business.
And so we're talking about data, and we're talking about the sales cycle and the pricing model, but how do we go from having a lot of information and a lot of data to having data that helps create a successful sales cycle?
Martin?
Yeah. So looking at that data obviously is critical. So you can see a couple of things. So first of all, there are 4 levers overall that you can use to kind of sell more. So you can have more deals in your pipeline. You can have bigger deals or kind of just a higher price. You can close at a better rate, so your conversion is higher, or you can move deals through the pipeline faster. And out of these 4, the last one, the moving deals through the pipeline faster, is the most under the control of the salesperson. So looking at your data and understanding where it is that you're losing time in the cycle is really, really important. Obviously, you can kind of try to raise the price or kind of try to improve your conversion, but the speed really is the most under your control. For example, if you understand that you are spending kind of 4 or 5 days until you get the meeting booked, because you're kind of back and forth emailing with the customer and just trying to find the day, this affects your sales cycle. So if you can cut that out, then you can kind of reduce that time. You spend less time on just the back and forth emailing, and you save kind of 10 minutes, but you also save kind of 5 days in your sales cycle. You can narrow that down. And looking at that data, and obviously Pipedrive is really good for that, will give you these insights where you can cut down the sales cycle and sell more.
Yeah, it's a great example. This may be somewhat unique to SendGrid just because of the nature of our model, where we have 75,000 paying customers. That's a very different model than most traditional enterprise software companies. But because of that scale, we can actually use AI to interrogate our own data about our own customer base and install base and say, okay, go run, we have collected lots of data, lots of characteristics about those 74,000 customers. And the machine learning models will actually go and predict this segment of customers are most likely to be interested in buying this additional cross-sell product based on the pattern matching with the rest of our base. And so you can start to use AI internally as well to help you identify where in your install base, because as we all know, the easiest customer to sell to is the customer you already have, right? It's going to be the least expensive, it's the most valuable to go get after. So how do you use AI to identify those? We had a project internally at SendGrid called Project Magnify, and the results have been stunning. It's like a 70% correlation to being able to identify somebody as that's a great cross-sell target, and then them converting.
And for us, as a traditional enterprise software provider, to me, and I think Martin Sameer made great points, and I agree completely, to us, it's also about what's your escalation model inside of your sales pipeline, right? And when we're dealing with a large customer, we will escalate as we need to. And the good news is, because we're a pretty sizable company at this point, we can escalate across multiple sources. It doesn't all end up on my desk anymore, although at one point it did. The thing I tell entrepreneurs is, if you're not out selling, nobody is. And you really, even to this day, our largest customers want to meet with myself, the president of the company, or our CTO, and that involves flying a lot, getting out there, taking them to dinner, all of the things that are mission critical to getting deals closed and then to grow.
Yeah, that is really coming back to this, the price question. So if you have 75,000 customers, we have 75,000 customers, obviously can't have dinner with all of them, otherwise it wouldn't scale.
That's why I said the highest. So you have to understand your escalation pipeline, which is what I was saying, Martin. And so, for example, for our top 20 clients, and we have 758 clients, I know the CMOs of most of them, and I'm taking them out to dinner. For the next 100, it's the president, chief operating officer, and CTO. You get down to the next few hundred, they're dealing with the chief revenue officer, and you get through it. If you build a schema and a mapping on how to escalate size of opportunity, you can move more through the pipe into customers. At least that's what we have found.
There's actually a question from the audience that relates to this. Do you have any examples of having to slow down your growth to focus on whether it's quality of product or quality of the sales cycle itself?
So I have a great example on that. My last company, which I don't talk about a ton, but was the #1 company on the Inc. 500 that year. It was also a year I think we took it public for $1.6 billion, both in 2004, and we grew too fast. We had grown the company by 20 or 30,000% organically, and we ended up blowing up. A company ended up getting bought, and today it's a part of a very, very large company, but it was an absolute catastrophic failure for me in that we grew so fast. We weren't able to build the internal controls. Sometimes the people who get you to where you are not always the right people to take you where you want to go. And fortunately, we got up off the mat, and today we're running a multi-billion-dollar company again. But I will tell you, we're growing at 30% a year, very nicely, and we are weirdly profitable, as my people tell me, for a growth technology company. But one of the things we focused on early was maintaining fairly sizable operating margins and cash flow, which some people still. I remember taking meetings in Silicon Valley, I'm sure you guys have well, where they looked at me like I was a total idiot for making money. Then I'd go to New York and they'd be like, you don't make enough. So it's like you get caught in between the two.
A lot of talk is about technical scalability, and it's definitely important, but people often forget about the business scalability. Do you have the kind of the business, the people, the operations in place to actually deal with all of that growth. So you need to have a really good balance, and kind of if it really comes to it, I think you should slow down. Like luckily we haven't had to, but it's also kind of a second or third or fourth company for some of our founders. So we were kind of able to look out for these things.
Yeah, I mean, if your primary value proposition is being jeopardized because of the quality of your service, then you have to slow it down. Because that is your brand, that is who you are, that's how you're serving your customers. If you're inside of that tornado, and Jeffrey Moore speak, and it is starting to degrade the quality of experience for your customer, you do have to slow it down. I know SendGrid in our early years, as we scaled, we came out of the gates really fast and it hockey sticked. It was all that we could do to keep up with the demand of customers and the scale of the system. We weren't able to invest in as many of the innovation features in the first set of years just because we were trying to build the infrastructure fast enough to keep up with demand. Obviously, ultimately, we were able to come back around to that, but we made a very intentional choice. The service has to work with 99.99% reliability.
Absolutely.
It's got to work like a utility socket, and so we made that trade. And since then, we've now been able to add new features, new product lines that have continued to help us keep growth at high rates, but they're in those moderated levels. And it is funny when David talks about that balance between growth and profitability. It's an age-old discussion in tech, and how much do you throttle into the growth? I do think the rule of 40 is a useful construct. If you're growing, 80%, burn away. If you're growing 30%, make some money. It's that should be it is a helpful barometer for that balance.
And to his point, this rule of 40 that you really hear about, we're at 50.
Yeah.
If you combine growth and operating margin, but at the end of the day, it's so important.
Yeah.
And most organizations lose sight of that. And you guys both have grown rapidly. We grew rapidly. We're 11 years old, so we grew really rapidly initially, and then had to figure it out and slow down as well.
Yeah.
We have less than a minute, but I have one question that we have to ask very quickly. For sales managers or entrepreneurs where the product is perfect and they need to generate more revenue and bring it into their business, what piece of advice would you give them? This is a question for each of you.
Get out and sell.
Yeah.
I mean, the single biggest thing, and as we say, we've bought a lot of companies. The ones that win are where the senior management team is focused on selling.
Yeah, totally agree. Talk to your users, talk to your customers. That's the most critical thing.
Yeah, I would just I would layer in, agree with both, and layer in scalability of that model. So how can you replicate it? Can you predict it? These are the things they need to say to this ideal customer profile, and I can go hire 5 reps, 10 reps, 50 reps, 100 reps, 1,000 reps. When you get that machine going, if you've got the perfect product with the perfect value prop, scalability of the model is going to be key.
Yeah, process is key.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks all.
Mm-hmm.